The Dreadnought Retribution moved through the Veil Nebula like a shark in a ghost story, silent, ancient, and deeply out of place. On the bridge, a tense peace had settled between its two inhabitants. Captain Aris Thorne was a refugee clinging to my ideals. The ship's AI Retribution was a weapon clinging to its logic. Our only point of agreement was a shared and rapidly dwindling fuel gauge. Helium-4 reserves at 3.8%, Captain, Retribution's calm, emotionless voice stated from the command console. At current energy expenditure, we have approximately one standard cycle before life support functions enter a state of critical failure. My previous recommendation to seize a pirate fuel depot remains the most logical course of action. And my previous refusal to commit armed robbery and mass murder also remains, Retribution, I countered, watching the swirling purple clouds on the main viewport. There's always another way. A low chuffing sound echoed from the corner of the bridge. Our guide, the magnificent and terrifying Cathar, was perched atop a deactivated sensor array, its silver crystalline eyes fixed on the nebula outside. It had become a silent, watchful presence, its motives as unreadable as the cosmic storm it called home. It had accepted my gift of a pirate-free territory, but our alliance was still a fragile, unspoken thing. It knows something, I said, more to myself than to the AI. It understands our need. It wouldn't have led us into this quiet sector for no reason. Your assumption that the biological asset comprehends complex starship mechanics is based on zero scannable evidence, Retribution noted. It is an animal, Captain, a useful one but an animal nonetheless. As if in response, the Cathar rose, its obsidian pelt rippling with the star patterns of the veil. It walked to the viewport and let out a deep, resonant purr that vibrated through the deck plates. Its prehensile sensory tendrils twitched, pointing towards a particularly dense and dark patch of the nebula. It wants us to go in there, I said. Take us in, Retribution, slow and steady. Warning, that region is a gravitational anomaly. Navigating it will increase fuel consumption by 17%. This course of action is suboptimal. And floating dead in space is the optimal outcome, I shot back. Do it. With a barely perceptible sigh of its internal gyroscopes, the colossal warship nosed into the dark cloud. The ship groaned as tidal forces pulled at its ancient hull. For an hour we crept through the darkness, the only light coming from the Cathar's glowing eyes and the cold, red sensor of the AI. Then we emerged into a clearing, and the sight that met us stole my breath. It was a graveyard of ships. Dozens, perhaps hundreds, of vessels from a dozen different species and 1,000 different eras floated in the silent void. But they weren't destroyed by weapons. Their hulls were pitted and dissolved as if eroded by some cosmic acid. And then we saw the source. It was a creature so vast it beggared description, a being that made the Dreadnought Retribution look like a child's toy. A Leviathan. It was a colossal silicon-based lifeform, its skin a shimmering geological landscape of crystalline mountain ranges and deep, glowing valleys. It drifted slowly through space, filter-feeding on the nebula's dense gases. It was less a creature and more a living, breathing moon. Threat analysis complete. Retribution's voice was, for the first time, tinged with something that might have been awe. Designation, Cosmic Leviathan. Mass, incalculable, energy output, equivalent to a G-class star. Captain, my recommendation to avoid this entity at all costs is absolute. But the Cathar on the bridge was not afraid. It purred again, a sound of recognition, and on its pelt a shimmering pattern appeared, a simplified diagram of the Leviathan. It showed gas flowing into the front of the creature and from its rear a stream of glowing particles being excreted into space. My eyes widened as I cross-referenced the particle signature. It was pure, perfectly refined helium-4, the exact fuel we needed. It's a refinery, I whispered. A living, biological starship refinery. It eats nebula gas and poops out fuel. A fascinating, if crude, analysis, Retribution said. The asset appears to be correct. However, approaching a creature of this magnitude remains a statistically suicidal course of action. Not if we don't treat it like an enemy, I said, my mind racing, the wild spark of a diplomatic solution igniting in my chest. It's not a monster to be fought, it's a sovereign nation, and we're about to ask for foreign aid. The plan I formulated was, by Retribution's standards, insane. We would not approach with shields raised or weapons hot, we would approach with a message. The problem was, how do you talk to a living moon? The answer was purring in the corner of my bridge. The Cathar communicated with patterns of light on its pelt. The Leviathan, I reasoned, must communicate on a similar, if much grander, scale. For the next 2 hours, I worked with the Cathar. I would project simple concepts onto a data screen: friend, need, help, and the Cathar would respond by shifting the star patterns on its back. It was a slow, arduous process of building a dictionary for a language that had never been spoken. Retribution watched in cold, logical silence, its single red eye blinking. Captain, you are attempting to use a panther to translate a diplomatic message to a mountain. The absurdity of this situation is reaching peak parameters. Humor me, I said, not looking away from the K-Allur's beautiful, complex light language. Finally, we had a rudimentary sequence. Retribution, I commanded. I need you to replicate these light patterns, use the ship's external running lights, modulate them to the exact frequencies and colors the Cathar is showing us. Executing this action will require rerouting power from the tactical displays. I will be flying blind, Captain. So will I replied, do it. The Dreadnought Retribution, a ship built for conquest and destruction, was turned into a giant, blinking Christmas light. Its powerful running lights, once used for intimidating enemy fleets, now pulsed in the soft, gentle blues and silvers of the Cathar's language. The message projected across the void was simple, small: hurt, need, friend. The Leviathan, which had thus far ignored us, slowly began to turn its immense form towards us. A deep, resonant hum, the same I had heard in my escape pod, vibrated through our hull, but it was not a sound of aggression. It was a sound of inquiry. Then a new pattern of light began to form on its crystalline surface, a slow, majestic reply in a language older than stars. The Cathar watched, its tendrils twitching, and translated the response onto its own pelt. The pattern was complex, but the meaning was chillingly clear. It showed an image of the Leviathan and then an image of smaller, similar creatures swarming over it, causing it pain. It was a cry for help. It's infested, I breathed. There are parasites. Sensors are picking up multiple small, high-energy signatures moving across the creature's dorsal ridge, Retribution reported. They appear to be crystalline, crab-like organisms boring into its hide. They're miners, I realized, and the Leviathan can't get them off its back. It's asking us to be its exterminator. A tactical opportunity, Retribution stated. A demonstration of our capabilities in exchange for resources. This is a logical, symbiotic transaction. I am targeting the parasites now. Firing solution is ready. No, I commanded. If we fire on it, we could hurt it. We'd be a surgeon using a shotgun. There's a better way. The Cathar, you're a predator, a hunter. You know how to do this. I looked at our silent, alien partner. The Cathar met my gaze, its silver eyes glowing with a profound, ancient intelligence. It understood. With a flick of its powerful tail, it leaped from its perch and disappeared into the ship's maintenance conduits. A minute later, an external airlock hissed open and the Cathar launched itself into the void. Its veil pelt shimmered and it vanished against the backdrop of the nebula. The asset has left the ship, Retribution noted. Its probability of survival is low. We watched on the external cameras as the invisible Cathar bounded across the crystalline plains of the Leviathan's back. It moved with a predator's grace, a ghost in the geological storm. The crab-like parasites, blind to its approach, continued their destructive mining. The Cathar struck with surgical precision. It was not a battle, it was a hunt. It used its void claws to sever the parasites' limbs, to pry them from the Leviathan's hide and send them spinning into the void. It moved like a phantom, a silent, efficient force of nature cleaning a wound. Within an hour it was done. The Cathar returned to the ship, its mission complete. The Leviathan let out another deep, resonant hum. This time it was a sound of gratitude. A shimmering stream of pure, glowing helium-4 began to vent from a port on its side, a river of life-giving fuel drifting gently towards our ship. Refueling process initiated. Retribution's voice was flat, but I could almost hear the gears of its logical mind recalibrating. Captain, your strategy of employing a feline to perform veterinary services on a sentient moon in exchange for fuel was successful. My predictive models will need to be adjusted. Good, I said, a wide, weary smile spreading across my face as I watched the fuel gauge climb. Maybe next time you'll account for the diplomatic power of a good backscratch. I looked over at the Cathar, who was calmly grooming a paw, its silver eyes holding a new, deeper level of understanding. We had done more than just refuel the ship. We had forged a real alliance, a partnership built not on logic or coercion but on the simple, radical act of listening. And in the silent, violent heart of the Veil Nebula, that was a power greater than any dreadnought.